Healthy attachment can be interrupted by a number of different factors. Probably the most obvious one is that a child can lose a caregiver. For a baby especially, a caregiver is their whole world, and losing a caregiver means losing everything. The other things that can interrupt a healthy attachment are illness of the mother when she's not available emotionally, unpredictable caregiving, and of course, abuse and serious neglect.
And what does
Attachment disorder can manifest in a number of ways, but the underlying feature of them all is that the baby or the child doesn't trust the caregiving environment to be there for him for whatever he needs. Attachment disorder has a number of definitions. The most official one is really quite inadequate because it really says the child is behaving inappropriately in most of their social situations. This doesn't really let us know what's going on with the child or what to look for. What we've seen is that many children who have attachment disorder have difficulty trusting, may have difficulty in their relationships with peers. They sometimes have difficulty with their attention or their ability to manage their behavior. There's so many different ways that early attachment disruption can disrupt development that really the diagnosis we've been using is not very useful. There are a lot of ways attachment-focused therapy is different from typical psychotherapy. First, when we have a child who has difficulty trusting their primary caregivers, our primary goal is to help that child develop a secure relationship with their caregiver. Therefore, we almost always have parents and children together in therapy. And we are working on the relationship, not on the individual psychological problems of one of the pair who are with us, or the trio, or the many people who may be with us in therapy. Secondly, we really have to work with the child and the parent to help the child replace skills they might not have learned when they were younger, skills of managing themselves, their behavior, their attention, and skills of relating to other people. And finally, we really have to address their trauma that they've experienced when they lost important people or when they were hurt, maybe when they left a country that they had known from birth. Each of these goals is a big goal for a young child and their family. And although we talk about a phased approach in therapy, we really are talking about continually addressing these different areas of treatment. And it's usually quite a lengthy treatment. One of our primary goals in therapy is to help a child who did not learn how to manage internal states, how to manage behavior, how to manage their attention, help them learn how to regulate all those things. Those are things that children usually learn in the first 18 months of life. And many of the children who've had disruptions of attachment or losses or traumas really never learned those skills. Or what they learned was to behave in ways that were quite unpredictable and difficult for others around them to manage. So we work very hard on regulation in therapy. That means we are watching the child's cues that they are beginning to get upset, that they are beginning to get silly and maybe crazy, that they are beginning to get angry. And when we see just the beginning of that, we try to step in immediately to help them calm down, refocus, stop being overwhelmed by the difficult questions that are being asked, or whatever it is. Requires a lot of our effort in therapy to just address this one question, which in most therapies is never addressed.
I think one of the great breakthroughs in the last decade is the neuroscientists have been able to show the impact of abuse, neglect, and family violence, and especially chronic experiences of traumatic stress on the development of children. And one of the things that's been learned is how children experiencing abuse and neglect have. Let me start over here, because that's
Talking to me.
okay. All right.
My kid was born in a Romanian orphanage. It was the worst orphanage in Romania, with abuse and neglect magnified. She was the size of a 7-year-old child at the age of 13 and had the verbal ability of a 5-year-old. Can you explain to me how that happens?
Well, it's not surprising that you talk about those kind of effects, because one of the things we've learned, the parents have known for ages, and neuroscientists have been able to show in the last decade, is how experiences like that of your child impact the brain and impact specific structures in the brain. So they've been able to show that children have experienced chronic neglect in particular, and also chronic experiences of abuse, violence, but most particularly neglect, lead to such things like shrunken or less development of key structures in the brain, like the anterior cingulate, like the hippocampus, the corpus callosum, and other structures that help a child to be able to succeed and function. And that includes to be able to regulate feelings and emotions. And of course, that's a key capacity to succeed in preschool, key capacity to succeed in kindergarten, at first and second grade. So we often see with children who have had chronic experiences of neglect and abuse that they have trouble regulating their emotions. And that can be really traced to the impact of the abuse and neglect, to frankly often a decreased size of parts of their brain, and to a differential response compared to children who've received love and care and a secure attachment, which conversely helps to grow the brain and grow the ability to regulate. So often we see with children that have had chronic experiences of traumatic stress, the great difficulty managing feelings. They're easily set off, they may explode. The adults around them may not see what sets them off, but they do see the reaction. And at times it could be frightening, and often that reflects what the child learned they needed to do to survive. They may have needed to scream, to wail, or they wouldn't have gotten fed in the orphanage. They may have been desperate for basic nurturance. They may have felt abandoned and feeling that any time a key adult leaves the room, that once again they could literally be starving, or starving for attention, which we know again ties into what children need to develop. So what we can learn from this is what impacts the brain, and then conversely later what can help the child's brain to grow and to develop. But it's good to know and to have the measures that you do have, to know that my child is functioning at a such and such a level, like at a 4-year-old or 5-year-old level cognitively, even though the child may be older, because that can tell you where they're at in development. And it doesn't mean their development is stopped and it's all over for that child, but it does mean that that child's only gotten to that point in their development, and then comes the hard part and the challenging part, and the part where you come in, and the very most important part, which is you and providing a strong, secure attachment, rebuilding attachment with your child.